however many natural gifts you were born with, you were going to you were going to be born into slavery, live as a slave, and die as a slave. No hope. And I believe the same thing was what motivated the people in Gaza. Because they're mostly young men. They were born into a concentration camp. And they were living in it, a tiny concentration camp. It was Gaza's among the most densely populated places on earth. Now it's by far the most densely populated because the whole population has been compressed in a tiny portion of Gaza. But no prospects. They can't leave. You can't leave. You needed at the time about $10,000 to bribe people at the Rafah border to get out. Otherwise, you can't leave. If you had life-threatening illnesses like cancer, they wouldn't let you go unless you ratted, unless you were willing to be a collaborator. This is all documented. I mean, it's not my imagination at work. So, born into languish in and die in a concentration camp, how difficult it is to live in that situation, you know? So, I know the abolitionists, those who oppose slavery, were not just white people, but a large number of white people. There were also black people like Frederick Douglass. But they didn't feel in a position to condemn Nat Turner because how can you condemn a person for striking out, even wildly and seemingly madly? How can you condemn them if you're not in their shoes? Even Frederick Douglass, who was the greatest of the African-American abolitionists, a person of, if you ever read his speeches, they are kind of astonishing when you consider that he wasn't even allowed to read until he was about 18. It's mesmerizing, his speeches. Even and he was cautious because Nat Turner was considered a madman by white people, completely insane what he did. Remember, Nat Turner took babies or his band did, the insurrectionists, they threw them in the fireplace. Yes, they were ruthless, absolutely ruthless. But even Frederick Douglass, he was cautious because he's part of the abolitionist movement, and the abolitionists were absolutely against violence, totally against violence. Their modus operandi was what they called moral suasion. We want to try to make people aware of how wrong slavery is. But Frederick Douglass, he said, Nat Turner is one of our glorious martyrs. He called Nat Turner one of our founding fathers. So when people ask, how can the people of Gaza support what Hamas did, which overwhelmingly, morally they did. Politically, they're turning against it now because they see it didn't bear any fruit. How? And I could say, and how could Frederick Douglass, who eventually met Lincoln, and then he became part of the establishment. He actually became a hack. But even he said he's one of our glorious martyrs. And I think that's how the events, which will be memorialized on October 7th, I think that it will probably, I won't be around, but it will probably enjoy, rather than suffer, enjoy the same fate as the Nat Turner Rebellion. Right now, Nat Turner, if you read African-American history, he's considered a hero. But if you read the actual story, they killed about 61 people in the most brutal ways, children, women, all civilians, you know. So you could say, how could we be celebrating him? But he is. He's now a celebrated figure. I think this, my guess, but I won't be around, and I don't know if any of us will be around.